I never lost a bet in my life. Not once. Not a single time.
He was the kind of man who didn't make bets he couldn't control, who didn't walk into rooms he hadn't already calculated. 34 years old, Korean billionaire, CEO of Seo Group, the kind of company that didn't need to advertise because the money spoke before he ever opened his mouth. He had a reputation, not for being cruel. Cruel was too simple. For being impossible. Every hire, every direct report, every person who walked through that door convinced they were the exception. Gone. Within weeks, sometimes days. His best friend called it a...
Woo-jin, that's a character flaw.
No, Byung, that's efficiency filtering.
And then, Byung-hun made the bet, and Woo-jin, without hesitation, said yes. He never loses, except he hadn't seen the file yet. The meeting had been over for 20 minutes. Everyone else had left. Byung-hun hadn't. He stood at the bar cart in the corner of the boardroom, unhurried, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey like a man who had already decided this conversation was happening whether Woo-jin wanted it to or not. Woo-jin loosened his tie. 1 button, that was as undone as he got. "Say what you came to say," Woo-jin said. Byung-hun handed him the glass. 7. Woo-jin looked at him. 7 people, Byung-hun said, in 14 months. HR, 2 analysts, 3 assistants, and 1 senior director who actually cried, in the parking garage. The work was substandard. The work was fine. You were efficient. Byung-hun laughed. Not the warm kind. You keep calling it that. Woo-jin took a slow sip, said nothing. Nobody stays, Byung-hun said. You leaning against the table now, watching him. Not because the job is hard, because you make it impossible to just work. Every person in your orbit either has an ulterior motive or an exit strategy. Pick one. Woo-jin set the glass down. That's not true. Name one. Silence. A longer silence than Woo-jin intended.
The next hire. Whoever HR sends next, you treat them like a human being. 30 days, no impossible deadlines, no 5 a.m. restructuring emails, no efficiency filtering. If they quit, you were right. The work is the problem, not you.
And if they stay?
You admit you're the problem.
The city stretched out behind the glass wall, 40 floors of lights and movement, and the indifferent hum of a world that did not care about this particular bet between these particular 2 men. Woo-jin picked up his glass, finished it, set it down, held out his hand. Fine. Byung-hun shook it. You never learn, he said. Woo-jin just smiled. He never loses. Monday, 7:52 in the morning. Woo-jin was already on a call. Tokyo. Something about a delayed merger. Something that required the particular tone he used when people were wasting his time, but needed to believe they weren't. His EA, So-yeon, came in quietly, placed a folder on the corner of his desk. New hire documentation. He didn't look up. He reached for it mid-sentence. The way he did everything, parallel, efficient. Flipped it open with one hand. Still talking. Still nodding at nothing. And then his voice stopped. Mid-word. Not a pause. A stop. He looked down at the file. The name, the photo, the title. Senior Strategy Director, effective Monday. So-yeon looked up from her tablet. Mr. Seo, is there a problem with the... No. He closed the file. Clean, composed. Send her the welcome brief. So-yeon nodded. Left. Woo-jin sat in the sudden quiet of his office. The city behind him, the file in front of him, the name he had spent 3 years not saying sitting there in clean black ink like it had never left. Abeni Cole. He didn't move for a long time. Woo-jin Seo, who always knew his next move, who had built an empire on never being caught off guard, sat very still and had absolutely nothing. Here is what happened. Not all at once, just in pieces. The way certain memories live, not as a full story, but as a collection of details your body refuses to forget. A church, white, everything white. The flowers, the light coming through tall windows, the silence of a room full of people holding their breath. Abeni stood at the altar in a dress she had chosen because he once said she looked like everything when she wore ivory. She had remembered that. She had written it down somewhere. She had been so careful. The doors at the back of the church did not open. 10 minutes past the hour, then 15, then she stopped counting. Her hands around the bouquet were perfectly still. White roses, his choice. She had let him choose the flowers. She had let him. Her maid of honor leaned in, quiet, close, the kind of whisper that tries not to be a warning and is one anyway. "Benny, do you want me to—" "No." One word. Steady. Abeni did not move, did not look at the guests, did not let her face do anything she could not take back. The text came at 2:17 p.m. She was sitting in the bridal suite, dress still on, flowers on the floor, the room around her impossibly quiet. "I'm sorry, I can't, forgive me." 3 sentences. No call, no explanation, nothing. Just absence, dressed up as an apology. She read it once, put the phone face down on the vanity, looked at herself in the mirror for a long time, then she got up and started taking the pins out of her hair one by one. What came after was not a breakdown. People expected a breakdown. What came after was something quieter and much harder. She cut her locks that October, sat in the chair and watched them fall, and felt something she still doesn't have a clean word for. Not relief, not grief. Something between the two that lives in the chest and doesn't announce itself. She moved cities in November, packed 2 bags and a box of books, and left everything else for someone else to deal with. She walked into her first boardroom in a new city in January. Burgundy blazer, heels that meant business, a name that was entirely her own. No hyphen, no history, just Abeni Cole. And what Abeni Cole could build, she built. God, she built. Year 1, junior strategist, top performer, promotion in 8 months when they'd told her 18. Year 2, lead on a campaign that won 3 industry awards and made her name the kind people remembered. Year 3, the offer from Seo Group. So senior strategy director, the role she had been quietly working toward since the day she decided she would not let one man's absence become the ceiling of her life. She took it. She had earned it. She did not know who was waiting on the other side of that door. And Woo-jin? Woo-jin built things too, taller things, more expensive things, things that looked like success from every angle you could photograph. He did not call. He told himself it was because she was better off. He told himself that for 3 years, with the discipline of a man who is very good at believing what he needs to. He never forgot the flowers, though. White roses, her hands, the way she had looked walking toward something she believed in completely. He never forgot. He just didn't know what to do with the remembering. She had done her research. That was the thing. Abeni Cole did not walk into rooms unprepared. She had read the Seo Group annual reports. She had studied the strategy division's output going back 4 years. She had looked at the company structure, the growth trajectory, the regional expansion timeline, all of it. What she had not done was Google the CEO, because she did not need to know who ran the company to know the company was worth joining, because she was a professional, because she was thorough about everything except the one name she had spent 3 years training herself not to look for. She found out the way you find out things you were never supposed to know standing up. The elevator opened on the executive floor, and there it was, the wall directly ahead, brushed steel letters, clean, authoritative, enormous. CSEO Group Woo-jin Seo. Chief Executive Officer Abeni stood in the elevator doors for 4 seconds. She counted, not because she was panicking, because she needed 4 seconds to take what her body was doing and put it somewhere it could not be seen. The doors began to close. She stepped forward. Her heels hit the marble floor. 1 step, then another. Her chin was level. Her blazer was pressed. Her portfolio was in her left hand, and her right hand was completely relaxed. She walked to the reception desk and smiled at the woman behind it like a woman who had never heard that name before in her life. Abeni Cole, Senior Strategy Director, first day. The receptionist smiled back and reached for her lanyard and said, "Welcome," and Abeni said, "Thank you," and the whole thing took 45 seconds and cost her absolutely everything she had. He was already in the room. Of course he was. Woo-jin Seo was always already in the room. She had forgotten that about him. She had not forgotten anything about him. The way he arrived before everyone else and stood like the room had been built around where he chose to stand. He was at the far end of the strategy table when the door opened. He looked up. She stopped. One breath. Just one. And then it was gone. Locked. Filed. Handled. She walked to the near end of the table and set her portfolio down and looked at him across 12 feet of polished conference table for the first time in 3 years. He had stood when she entered. Reflex. The kind of manners that live in the body even when the person doesn't deserve to use them. Ms. Cole. His voice was even, controlled. The voice of a man who had also clearly been practicing. Mr. SEO. Hers was smoother. She had 3 years of practice on him. Around the table, 2 junior analysts, So-yeon with her tablet, a department head whose name she had memorized from the org chart. All of them watching with the particular alertness of people who could feel a temperature in a room but couldn't name it. Woo-jin gestured to the presentation wall. "We'll begin with the Q3 brief. Ms. Cole, we can cover your onboarding after." Of course. She opened her portfolio, clicked her pen, looked at the screen. 12 feet of table between them. 3 years of everything else. Neither of them said a word about any of it. From the doorway, Byung-hun watched. He had come to introduce himself. He had stopped the moment the door opened and he saw Woo-jin's face do the thing it almost didn't do. That almost fracture, caught and contained in under a second. He looked at the woman now sitting at the other end of the table, composed, stunning, completely unbothered in a way that was clearly costing her something. He looked back at Woo-jin. He pulled out his phone, typed one word, sent it, slipped the phone back into his pocket, walked away. At the far end of the table, Woo-jin's phone buzzed once against the surface. He did not look at it. He looked at it 30 seconds later, when Abeni's eyes were on the screen. The message from Byung-hun, one word, yikes. Woo-jin turned the phone face down, said nothing, kept going. Day 1 of the bet. Woo-jin did not send a 6 a.m. email. This was already unprecedented. So-yeon arrived at 7:45 and checked her inbox with the particular caution of someone who had learned to brace for impact before her coat was off. Nothing. She checked again. Still nothing. She sat down slowly, like the floor might not hold. The brief landed on his desk Wednesday morning. 12 pages. Abeni's first strategy submission, a restructure proposal for the Southeast Regional account that had been bleeding quietly for 2 quarters. He read it once, straight through. No pen in hand, he picked up the red pen on the second read. Reflex habit, the muscle memory of a man who had never once approved a document without leaving his mark on it. He set it down on page 3, picked it up again on page 7, set it down, finished the document. And sat back. The red pen lay on the desk beside it, completely untouched. It was exceptional. He would not say that out loud. He would not say it to her, or to Byung-hun, or to So-yeon, or to anyone in this building or adjacent buildings. But it was. He stamped it approved, sent it back through So-yeon, no notes, no revisions, no attached memo that began with "while the overall direction is sound." Nothing. Just approved. Proceed. So-yeon stared at her screen for a full 6 seconds. Then she walked to Byung-hun's office and knocked. He approved the Cole brief. Byung-hun looked up. Without changes? Without a single change. Byung-hun leaned back in his chair and smiled the smile of a man who was winning a bet he had already won in his heart before it officially started. He texted Woo-jin, "You're being normal. It's unsettling." I don't like it," Woo-jin replied in under 10 seconds. "Go away." But here was the problem with being normal around Abeni Cole. Being normal meant being present. It meant walking the same floor and attending the same briefings and passing the same hallway at the same hours without the buffer of impossible demands and manufactured distance. It meant he noticed things. The way she organized her desk, everything at clean right angles, one exception, a single photograph propped against her monitor that he could never quite see clearly enough to know who was in it. The way she always had tea, never coffee. Something amber in a tall glass, no bag left in. The way she said good morning to the building security guard by name every single day. Small things, unbearably specific things. When the kind of things you only accumulate about a person when you are trying very hard not to. Abeni Cole was exceptional at her job. This was not new information. She had been exceptional since before she had anything to prove, but watching it up close after 3 years of only knowing her in outline, that was something else. Her team adored her. Not in the performative way people perform loyalty for a manager they fear. In the real way. The way you could see in a break room when no one thought anyone important was watching. She remembered birthdays. She stayed late when her team stayed late and left when they left and never once made them feel the difference in title. She laughed easily in rooms full of people, that full laugh, the unguarded one, the one he used to. He was not thinking about that. And with him? Courteous, precise, professional in a way that had edges, not cold. Cold would have been easier, and cold he could work with. Cold was a feeling dressed up as the absence of one. This was different. This was even, calibrated. The courtesy of a woman who had decided exactly how much of herself this particular person was entitled to, and had drawn that line somewhere far behind her eyes where he could not reach it. She did not linger after meetings. She did not engage past the work. She did not look at him 1 second longer than the conversation required. And she did it all with such complete warmth toward everyone else in the room that it was impossible to call it coldness. It was just the absence of anything extra for him specifically, which was, Woo-jin realized slowly, on a Thursday afternoon, watching her laugh at something a junior analyst said. So much worse than anger. Anger he could meet. Anger was contact. This was nothing. And nothing, from Abeni Cole, was the loudest thing he had ever heard. Most of the floor was empty by 8. The cleaning crew had come and gone. The overhead lights had dimmed to their after-hours low, and the only thing still fully lit on the east side of the floor was Abeni's desk. Woo-jin saw it on his way out. He had his coat on. His car was waiting. He kept walking. He stopped. He had told himself he was not going to stop. He turned, walked to the opening of her workspace. She had headphones on, one side only, the professional habit of someone who liked music but not at the cost of awareness. She felt him before she heard him, looked up, pulled the headphone down, waited. "You're still here," he said. "I am. It's past 8. I'm aware of the time, Mr. Seo." He should have left. He didn't. "Why did you take this role?" She looked at him for a moment. The particular look of someone deciding how much of a real answer a question deserves. "The work," she said. "Simple, final, closed." He let a beat pass. "Did you know I was here? When you accepted?" The pause was its own answer. Not because she hesitated out of guilt, but because she gave it the weight it was owed. "I do now," she said. She held his gaze 1 more second. Then she put the headphone back, looked at her screen. He stood there 1 second too long, 2 seconds, and then he left. The parking garage was quiet and cold, and very, very empty at 8:23 p.m. His car was where it always was. He got in, closed the door. The engine did not start. His hands sat on the wheel and the city moved silently beyond the concrete, and Woo-jin Seo sat in his own car in his own building and did absolutely nothing for 20 minutes. "I do now." 2 words. The steadiest 2 words he had ever heard in his life, and somehow the most devastating. He pressed the back of his hand to his mouth, started the car, went home, did not sleep, Byung-hyun sent the travel brief on a Tuesday. Both names on the same itinerary. Same flight, same hotel, same conference schedule for 2 days in Seoul. He did not explain himself. He did not need to. The email simply said, Regional Strategy Conference. Your presence is required, both of you. Woo-jin read it twice, picked up his phone, put it down, did not cancel. He told himself it was because the conference was important. The regional account, the numbers, the work. He was very convincing to himself for approximately 4 minutes. The airport was early morning gray. That specific 6 a.m. light that makes everyone look like they are moving through something unfinished. Abeni was already at the gate when he arrived. She had coffee, a window seat. Then a document open on her lap that she was reading with the focus of a woman who had decided this was a work trip and nothing else, and had briefed her entire nervous system accordingly. She looked up when he passed. Mr. Seo. Ms. Cole. He kept walking, took a seat 2 rows back, opened his phone, closed it, opened it again. The flight was 2 hours. He looked at the back of her seat for approximately none of that time. 40 minutes, give or take. The conference was different. That was the thing nobody had warned him about. Or maybe the thing he should have predicted and hadn't. They were seamless. Not performed seamless. Not professional seamless. The other kind. The effortless, embarrassing, completely involuntary kind that only existed between people who had once known each other down to the bone. She set up a point. When he landed it before she finished the sentence. He redirected a question. She had the data already open, the right slide, the right number, without being told. The regional director looked between them twice and then leaned over to his deputy and said something neither of them could hear but both of them felt. Afterward, in the corridor, a colleague from the northern office said, "How long have you two worked together?" Abeni smiled. "Not long. You'd never know it." She looked at Woo-jin for exactly 1 second. He looked back. Then they both looked away. Dinner was loud and warm and full of the particular energy of people relieved. A good day was over. Long table, candles. The regional director was funny, genuinely funny, the kind of person who told stories with the whole table in mind and landed them every time. Abeni laughed. Not the professional laugh, not the polite, measured, meeting-appropriate response. The real one. The one that came from somewhere below the collarbone. The one that lit up everything above her neck and made the people around her laugh harder just from the contact of it. Woo-jin had been mid-sentence. Something about the Q4 projection. Something important, probably. He forgot what it was. He forgot all of it completely. The sentence, the point, the number he had been about to say, because she was laughing and he was looking and 3 years collapsed into nothing in under a second. The man beside him said, "You were saying?" Woo-jin picked up his glass. "Right," he said. "Yes." He did not finish the sentence. 11:47 p.m. The team had gone to bed. The floor was quiet. That specific hotel quiet. The hum of climate control, the distant sound of a city that didn't know or care what was happening on the 9th floor of this particular building. Abeni had her ice bucket. She had not needed ice. She had needed 30 seconds outside her room and something to do with her hands. She was coming back from the alcove when she heard the door at the far end of the hall. Woo-jin, still in his dress shirt, jacket gone, phone in hand. A call. Just finished. The particular exhaustion of a man who had been speaking to someone else for an hour while thinking about something entirely different. They saw each other at the same moment, stopped. 6 feet of corridor between them, low, warm lighting, the hum of everything and the silence of the specific. Abeni looked at him, and then, because she was tired, because 2 days of seamless and professional and Mr. Seo had worn something down she hadn't meant to let wear, she asked it. The thing she had not asked for 3 years. "Why didn't you come?" Quiet, even, not angry. Anger would have been so much easier for both of them. Just the question. Just the one that had been sitting in her chest since 2:17 p.m. on a Saturday 3 years ago, when she read 3 sentences and understood that the answer was not coming. Woo-jin didn't move. He didn't deflect. He didn't reach for the version of himself that knew how to manage a room. He just stood there in the low light of a hotel hallway and told her the truth. I was afraid. She waited. He gave her the rest. You were the only thing I ever wanted that I didn't know how to deserve. The corridor was very quiet. Somewhere below them, the city moved without pause. Abeni looked at him for a long time, the way you look at something when you are deciding whether the truth is enough. It wasn't. That's not good enough, Jin. First time. His name. Not Mr. Seo. Jin. Like she had reached back across 3 years just to take it back. She walked to her door, card to the lock, green light. She went inside. The door closed. Woo-jin stood in the hallway. He did not move for a long time, head slightly down, hands at his sides, the posture of a man who had just said the truest thing he had ever said out loud and found out it wasn't enough. He had known it might not be. He had said it anyway. That was something. It was not enough, but it was something. On the other side of the door, Abeni leaned back against the wood, ice bucket still in her hand, eyes closed, his voice saying her name, the way it had sounded saying afraid like the word cost him something real, sat in the room with her warm and unwelcome and completely refused to leave. She stood there for a long time. Then she set the ice bucket down and went to bed and did not sleep for most of what remained of the night. Thursday evening. Amma arrived at 7 p.m. the way she always did, one hand on a bag of takeout, the other already texting, letting herself in with the key Abeni had given her 2 apartments ago and never asked back for. I got the noodles you like and the other noodles because I didn't trust myself to remember which ones you actually like. She set everything on the coffee table, looked up, stopped. What's wrong with your face? Abeni looked up from the couch. Nothing is wrong with my face. Your face is doing a thing. My face is not doing anything. Amma sat down, crossed her legs, opened a container, looked at her. Benny, Amma, I have known you for 11 years. Your face is doing a thing. It came out in pieces, the way things came out with Amma. Not because she pushed exactly, but because she had this particular quality of waiting that made silence feel more expensive than honesty. The conference first, the presentation, how seamless it had been, how unearned that seamlessness felt, how much she had hated that her body remembered him before her mind gave it permission. Then dinner, the laugh. The way she had felt him looking and had not looked back and had gone home that night and lain awake cataloging the ceiling. Then the hallway. Amma set her noodles down very carefully at the hallway part. He said what? That he was afraid. And Abeni looked at the middle distance, that I was the only thing he ever wanted that he didn't know how to deserve. Amma was quiet for 3 full seconds, which for Amma was a very long time. And what did you say? I said it wasn't good enough. And then I went inside. And then Abeni said nothing. Abeni Cole, and then what? And then I stood against the door for probably too long. Amma exhaled, not unkindly, the exhale of a woman who had been waiting for this particular admission since approximately the 2nd week of the new job. Okay, she said. Okay, I need you to look at something and I need you to not shoot the messenger. She was already reaching for her phone. She had found it 6 days ago. A business profile piece. The kind of thing that ran in industry magazines and got shared by people who like to feel adjacent to that kind of money. 8 months old. Woo-jin Seo, the profile, the architecture of his reputation. And there, near the bottom, almost a footnote, almost nothing. Sources close to Seo Group note that the CEO has an ongoing informal arrangement with COO Byung-hun Lim, a wager of sorts regarding staff retention and Seo's famously exacting management standards. Amma held the phone out. Abeni took it, read it. The apartment was warm. The candles Amma had lit without being asked, because Amma always lit candles like she was preemptively setting the scene for whatever was about to happen, flickered softly. Abeni read it again, slower. The noodles were getting cold. Neither of them mentioned it. She set the phone down on the coffee table, face up, screen still lit, the word wager sitting there in clean serif font like it had always been there, like it had been waiting. She thought about the brief he had approved without a single note. She thought about the conference, the hotel hallway. I was afraid. You were the only thing. She pressed her palm flat against her knee. Benny, I know. Do you want to? Not yet. She sat very still in her warm apartment with her best friend beside her and the phone on the table and 3 years in a hallway and one word, wager, rearranging everything she thought she had finally figured out. She did not go Friday. She did not go over the weekend. She went Monday morning. Because she was Abeni Cole, and she did not make decisions from the hot center of a feeling when a few days of cold clarity was available to her. She walked into his office at 9 a.m. She closed the door. Not hard, just closed. Woo-jin looked up from his desk and knew immediately, the way you know with someone who has never once been unclear with their body, that this was not a work conversation. He stood, not behind the desk. He came around it and stood in front of it like a man who had decided he was not going to use furniture as a shield today. Abeni looked at him. The bet. One breath. Tell me about the bet. He didn't insult her by pretending. He didn't reach for the version of himself that could talk around corners. He told her. All of it. The boardroom, the whiskey, Byung-hun's terms, his own certainty that he would win before he had even considered what winning meant. Any employee. 30 days. Prove it was the work and not him. When did you find out it was me? The morning you started. The file. Something moved across her face. So you knew. Before I walked in. You knew and you said nothing. Yes. The word cost him. She let it. Did you keep the bet going? With me? The pause was its own answer. Long enough to be honest, short enough to not be cruel. At first. She nodded once. Slow. The nod of a woman filing information in the correct folder. And then, Woo-jin said, and his voice dropped into something quieter, something that had no performance left in it. It stopped. Before the conference. Before the hallway. Before any of that. He looked at her directly. It stopped the moment I saw your name on that file and understood, actually understood, what I had walked away from, what I had lost. It stopped being a bet the second it became real. And Abeni, her name, not Ms. Cole, Abeni. It has been real since before I had the right to call it that. The office was quiet. Outside the glass walls, the floor moved. People, keyboards, the ordinary machinery of a working day that did not know or care what was happening in this particular room. Abeni stood 2 feet from him, not touching. Her expression was the most controlled thing in the building. Contained fury, and underneath it, deeper, the thing she was more afraid of, contained feeling. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, I need you to understand what you've done. Not just 3 years ago. This too. I walked in here and did everything right. I did the work. I kept it professional. I built something clean out of something that could have destroyed me twice. And you let me do all of that while knowing. Yes. And you think telling me now is enough? No. The word was immediate. I don't think it's enough. I think it's all I have and you deserve more, and I'm telling you anyway, because the alternative is saying nothing, and I have already done that once, and I will not do it again. The glass wall behind him held the city. The city held its breath. Abeni picked up her portfolio from the chair beside her. She looked at him one more time. I haven't decided anything, she said. I need you to let me not decide anything for a while. Okay? Don't be understanding about it. It's annoying when you're understanding. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Okay. She walked to the door, hand on the handle. She didn't turn around. Woo-jin. His name, for the second time. The brief you approved without notes. A pause. Was it actually good, or were you just being careful? The answer came without hesitation. It was the best work I've seen in 4 years. She opened the door, walked out. Woo-jin stood in his office and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose and breathed. She walked back to her desk at 9:23 a.m., sat down, opened her laptop, found her place in the document she'd been working on before 9 a.m., before the office, before all of it, and kept going. Her jaw was tight. Only that. Only if you knew exactly where to look. Her team had a 10 a.m. She ran it. Efficiently, warmly, with the particular quality of attention she gave every meeting. Like the people in the room were the only thing that existed for the duration of it. She took notes. She assigned actions. She laughed once at something met in the doorway, and the laugh was real because she refused to let this morning reach that far. Some things were hers. Her work was hers. Her team was hers. Her laugh was hers. He did not get to touch those. Woo-jin sat at his desk and did approximately the shape of work. Yet the documents were open. The calls were answered. The responses were sent with the correct information in the correct format because his competence was not something that required his full presence. It ran on its own at this point. Muscle and instinct and 14 years of knowing exactly what he was doing. But the window got more of him than the screen did. The city. The particular gray of a Monday that had already asked too much of him before 10 a.m. Byung-hun appeared in his doorway at 11, looked at him, looked at the window, looked at him again, said nothing, left. Which was, Woo-jin thought, the most useful thing Byung-hun had done in recent memory. The hallway happened twice. Once at noon, she was going to the kitchen. He was coming from a call. They were 10 feet apart for approximately 4 seconds. She looked ahead, and he looked ahead. They passed. Neither of them said anything, and the nothing was so loud. So-yeon, standing at the printer nearby, looked up to find the source of a sound that hadn't actually been made. The second time was at 3 p.m., closer. 6 feet, the same direction. Him slowing without meaning to, her maintaining pace without acknowledging she had noticed him slow. 4 seconds. Then she was gone around the corner. He stood in the hallway for 1 moment longer than he should have. Then he went back to his office and closed the door and gave her the thing she had asked for. Space. It cost him in a way he had not budgeted for. At 6:14 p.m., the light at Abeni's desk went off. Woo-jin did not see it happen. He felt it. The way the floor changed texture when she left became slightly less like a place worth being. He stayed. Warring his light stayed on. The floor emptied around it, and he sat in the warm yellow circle of his desk lamp and did the rest of the work and did not text her, and did not call, and did not do the 10 other things he wanted to do, because she had asked for space, and he was, for once in his adult life, going to give someone exactly what they asked for, even when it cost him everything he had. She sat in her car for a long time before she called. The city moved beyond the windshield. Rain now, soft and steady, the kind that didn't ask for anything, just fell. The dashboard lights were low and warm. Her hands were in her lap, not on the wheel, just there. She pressed call at 7:41 p.m. Amma picked up on the second ring, which meant she had been waiting, phone nearby, doing the thing she always did, which was be available without making availability a performance. Hey, a pause. You okay? I don't know. Tell me. So Abeni told her. The confrontation, his face, the way he had come out from behind the desk, that specific detail she had not meant to notice and could not stop noticing. What he had said. It stopped being a bet the moment I saw your name. You were the only thing. I will not do it again. And she told Amma all of it in the quiet of her car with rain on the glass and the city blurred and glittering beyond it. When she finished, Amma was quiet for a moment. Just one. Okay, she said. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to actually answer it. Not the smart answer, not the safe answer, the real one. Okay? What do you want? Not what he deserves, not what makes sense, not what's logical or protected or clean. A beat. What does Abeni Cole actually want? The rain fell. A car passed on the street outside, headlights sliding across the windshield, there and gone. Abeni leaned her head back against the headrest, eyes on the ceiling of the car. The answer was already there. It had been there since the hotel hallway, probably before. Or probably since the first Monday when the elevator opened and she had seen his name on that wall and walked forward anyway. I want to not want him, she said. Quiet. Honest. The most expensive kind of honest. But I don't know how to get there anymore. Amma let that sit for exactly the right amount of time. Not too long, not rushed. Then stop, she said. Stop trying to get there. Abeni closed her eyes. Amma, I'm not telling you to trust him. I'm not telling you it's safe or smart or that he deserves one more second of your energy. A pause. I'm telling you that you have spent 3 years building a life strong enough to survive him, which means you are strong enough to make a choice from a place of strength, not fear, not protection, not what if it breaks me. Her voice softened. You already know what breaking feels like. You survived it. You built something extraordinary on the other side of it. Silence. The rain. So what do you want to build next? Abeni sat in her car in the rain with her best friend's voice in her ear and the city asking nothing of her for once. She thought about yellow tulips. She thought about a hotel hallway. She thought about a man who came out from behind his desk and told the truth when lying would have been so much easier for both of them. She didn't answer the question out loud. She didn't need to. Amma already knew. Go home, Amma said gently. Sleep. And then go do the thing you've already decided. Abeni almost smiled. I haven't decided anything. Okay, Benny. A pause. Good night. Good night. She sat in the car a little longer. Then she started the engine, drove home. Did not sleep for most of what remained of the night. Saturday morning, 7:48 a.m. Woo-jin texted Byung-hun at 7:49. Cover my morning. Byung-hun replied in 4 seconds. It's Saturday. I don't have a morning to cover. There's nothing scheduled. Woo-jin stared at the response. Then cover the nothing. A long pause. Then, where are you going? Woo-jin put his phone in his pocket and got in his car. She had mentioned it once, not to him directly. At least, not in the way people say things they expect to be remembered. It was September, a Tuesday. They had been in the same elevator going down. Still early days, still the carefully measured Mr. Seo/Ms. Cole. And she had been holding a coffee cup from somewhere that wasn't the office kitchen, and he had noticed because he noticed everything about her that she didn't intend for him to notice. Good coffee? He had asked. Or because he was apparently incapable of saying nothing. She had looked at the cup. The cafe on Mercer, near my apartment. I go Saturdays when I need to think. She had looked up then, clocked something in his expression and pulled back into professional neutral. The elevator had opened. She had walked out. He had filed it without meaning to in the part of him that kept everything about her against his own advice. The cafe on Mercer was exactly what she had described without describing it. Small, warm, the kind of place that had been there long enough to stop trying to impress anyone and had become just genuinely good at being what it was. Window light, the smell of something baked, a low hum of Saturday morning. Not busy, not empty, just inhabited. She was at the corner table. Of course she was. Back to the wall, window to her left, coffee in both hands, a book open that she was not reading. He could tell from the door that she was not reading it. She looked up when he walked in. Her expression moved through 3 things in under a second. Surprise, then the closing of surprise, then the particular stillness of a woman deciding in real time what this moment was. He crossed to her table, stood. May I sit down? A pause that lasted exactly long enough to be honest. Yes. He sat. He had brought nothing, no flowers, no gesture, no object to hide behind or offer as a substitute for the thing he actually needed to say, just himself, which was, he understood now, the only thing that had ever mattered. He looked at her across the small table and said it without preamble. "I'm not here to ask for anything." She held her coffee cup, waited. "I just needed you to know." He chose each word the way you choose them when you have been carrying them for a long time and finally set them down carefully. "That I see it. All of it. The altar, the silence, the bet." He didn't look away. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not here to make a case. I'm asking you to believe one thing. That I know the cost. What I did cost you. What it cost specifically. Not in the abstract, not in the general way people acknowledge they've hurt someone, but the actual cost. What you had to rebuild. What it took. I know." He stopped. That was all. He had meant it. No ask, no angle, no door left open that she was obligated to walk through. He sat with it for a moment. Then he stood. "Thank you for letting me sit down." He meant that too. He walked to the door. With the little bell above it rang when he opened it, bright and brief and completely indifferent to the weight of what had just happened at the corner table. He left. Abeni sat with her coffee for a long time. The book stayed closed. The coffee went cold. She didn't notice either. She looked at the empty chair across from her. She thought about a man who had driven to a cafe he only knew about because he had listened to a throwaway sentence in an elevator 4 months ago, who had sat down with nothing in his hands, who had said, "I know the cost," and meant it in the specific way. She could feel the specificity of it. The difference between performed remorse and the real thing that had weight and edges and left marks on the person carrying it, who had then stood up and left before she could answer. No pressure, no performance, just the truth, delivered carefully, and then the space to do whatever she needed to do with it. She sat until the cafe filled up a little more around her. Then she closed her book, put on her coat, and went home. She did not call Amma. Not yet. Some things needed to happen in her own time, in her own order, before they became a conversation. She knew what she was going to do by the time she got home. She had probably known since the hallway, maybe before. His apartment was 20 minutes from hers on a Saturday evening with no traffic. She had changed out of her Saturday clothes, not into anything calculated, just something that felt like herself. Dark wrap dress, low heels, the gold earrings Amma had given her for her 30th birthday that she wore when she needed to feel like herself most completely. She stood outside his door for approximately 15 seconds, not hesitating, just arriving. Then she knocked. He opened it faster than a man who hadn't been expecting anyone should have opened it. He had been expecting her. He would not have said so out loud. He had simply been incapable of being anywhere in his apartment, except within range of the front door. He had changed too. Dark trousers, a simple gray shirt, no jacket, no armor, no version of himself constructed for anyone's benefit. He looked at her. She looked at him. "Can I come in?" He stepped back. She crossed the threshold, stopped just inside. Not yet settled, not yet all the way in. The doorway still close. She turned to face him. "I'm not over it," she said, directly, quietly. "I need you to know that. Not as a warning, as a fact. What you did at the altar, the silence after, the bet. I'm not over it, and I may never be fully over it, and I need that to be something you can hold without asking me to put it down on a timeline that works for you." He nodded. "Once?" He did not say "I understand" because understanding was not the point. Bearing witness was. But she steadied herself, not because she was unsure, because this part mattered and she wanted to say it right. "I have spent 3 years building a life strong enough to stand on, and I did not build it to spend the rest of it running from you." She held his gaze. "So here is what I'm offering. We start again, slowly, honestly. No bets, no games. No version of this where I am a point to be won or a problem to be managed." Her voice was even, certain. And the moment. I feel like a game to you again, I walk. No conversation, no explanation, no second chance after the second chance, just gone. She let that land. Are those terms you can live with? Woo-jin looked at her for a long moment. In the warm light of his apartment, with the city quiet outside the windows, and 3 years in a cafe and a hotel hallway between them, he looked at her the way a man looks at the most important thing he has ever been offered and knows it. Those are the only terms, he said quietly, I will ever agree to. Something shifted between them, not a dramatic shift, not the movie's version of this moment, just the particular relief of two people in the same room, finally facing the same direction. She exhaled, slow. He took one step forward, stopped. Can I? Yes, she said, before he finished the sentence. She knew what he was asking. She had known him long enough to know what he was asking. He closed the distance, put his arms around her carefully, the way you hold something you have already broken once and have no intention of breaking again. She let herself be held, for a moment, just that. His arms around her, her forehead against his shoulder, the city outside, the quiet inside. Though everything that had cost them both so much sitting in the room with them, not asked to leave, just acknowledged, held, present, and no longer in the way. The 30th day fell on a Thursday. Byung-hun appeared in Woo-jin's office at 10 a.m. with the energy of a man who had been waiting for this specific morning for 30 days and had dressed slightly better than usual for the occasion. He sat down across the desk without being invited, crossed one leg over the other, folded his hands. Well, Woo-jin did not look up from his screen. She's still here, Byung-hun said. I noticed. 30 days. I can count. She didn't quit. Byung-hun. She didn't even request a transfer. She didn't mysteriously develop a better offer elsewhere. She didn't write the apology. Byung-hun smiled, the enormous, deeply satisfied smile of a man who had been right about something important and had the receipts and the witness and the 30-day documentation to prove it. He reached into his jacket. Tam produced a folded piece of paper, because of course he had prepared it in advance, because of course he had written it already, because Byung-hun Lim had known how this ended since approximately scene 1. He unfolded it, smoothed it flat, slid it across the desk with 2 fingers. Woo-jin looked at it. I, Woo-jin Seo, acknowledged that the problem was me. B.H. Lim, witness and author date. Today, Woo-jin picked it up, read it, set it down. You wrote it in third person. For posterity. You signed it as witness and author. Felt thorough. Woo-jin almost smiled. Almost. He folded the paper and put it in his desk drawer and said nothing about what he was going to do with it. He was going to keep it, obviously. He was never going to admit that, also obviously. Byung-hun stayed. When he didn't always stay. Usually the victory lap was brief, the smugness self-contained, the exit clean. But today, he stayed. He looked at Woo-jin the way he looked at him when the performance was over, and they were just 2 men who had known each other since they were 22 and 24, and none of this was about bets or boardrooms or any of it. How are you actually doing? Woo-jin looked at him, then out the window. The city was bright, full Thursday morning light, the kind that made everything look more possible than it had at night. He thought about a cafe on Mercer, a doorway, arms around someone you had not deserved and were trying daily to become someone who did. Better than I deserve, he said, working on the gap. Byung-hun nodded, and at the nod of a man who understood what that meant completely and did not need it unpacked. She's good for you. I know. You're going to have to be very good for her. I know that too. A pause. The city. The light. The particular quality of a Thursday morning that felt like the first day of something that had actually been building for a very long time. Woo-jin. He looked at Byung-hun. I'm glad it was her who walked in. Woo-jin held that for a moment. Then he looked back at the window. So am I. There was no single moment. That was the thing about the real version, the one that wasn't a performance or a gesture or a point being proven. It was small, accumulative, the texture of two people choosing each other in the ordinary fabric of a regular day. Tuesday morning, strategy meeting. He came in with 2 coffees, hers exactly right, the amber tea in a tall glass, no bag, the way she always had it, set at her place before she arrived. She sat down, looked at it, looked at him across the table, said nothing, smiled with just the left corner of her mouth. He opened his notebook. The meeting began. Thursday afternoon. The quarterly review ran 40 minutes long, and everyone around the table had the particular energy of people who needed this to end 15 minutes ago. Woo-jin made a point about the northern margin. Abeni looked up from her notes. Not to respond, not to challenge, just a look. The kind that said, I know exactly what you mean, and you're right, and you know I think you're right, and this is the last time I'm saying it. He looked back. The same look in return. The shorthand of 2 people who had spent enough time in each other's orbit to have developed a language with no words in it. The junior analyst beside her saw it and looked down at his notes and decided he had not seen anything. He remembered something she had said in October, in passing, about a ceramics class she had been meaning to take for 2 years but never made time for. He said nothing at the time. In November, a small card appeared on her desk on a Monday morning, an enrollment confirmation, Saturday mornings, 6 weeks, her name already on the list. Where she stood at her desk holding the card for a moment. Then she walked to his office and opened the door without knocking and said, You remembered that. You mentioned it 4 months ago. You mentioned it, he said again, simply, like that was the whole explanation. Because for him, it was. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, Thank you, and left. He looked at the door she had closed behind her and felt something in his chest do the thing it did now with increasing regularity, that specific warmth that had no business name and did not need one. Friday evening, the floor mostly empty. She said something at the end of a hallway, something small, a joke about the vending machine that had been broken for 3 weeks and the facilities memo that kept promising to fix it. Not a big joke, not a performance, just the dry. And quick humor she deployed when she was comfortable. He laughed, the real laugh, the one that came out before he could decide whether to let it. She looked at him when it happened, like she was seeing something she had wondered about, like the laugh was new information that confirmed something old. She smiled, went to the elevator. He stood in the hallway smiling at nothing for slightly too long. This was what chosen looked like. Not a grand gesture, not a moment designed to be witnessed. 2 coffees, a look across a table, a ceramics class remembered 4 months late and offered without ceremony, a laugh that came out before permission was given, the ease coming back, different this time. Not the ease of people who had always been this way, but the ease of people who had chosen to become this way after everything that had made it complicated, better, stronger, theirs. He told her 3 weeks before he was going to propose. Not in those words. He told her he wanted to take her somewhere. She said where. He said it was a surprise. She said she didn't like surprises. He said she would like this one. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said fine in the voice that meant I trust you, which was, he understood, the most valuable thing she had ever given him, and the thing he was most committed to, never mishandling again. The building was across the city, a corporate tower she hadn't been back to since she left her old firm. The rooftop was accessible only from the inside, and he had called in a significant favor to get them up there on a Tuesday evening at golden hour. And she didn't know why they were here until they stepped through the rooftop door, and she looked out at the city spread below in the last amber light of the day. And then she looked at the building beneath them and understood. This is where Your first major presentation, 3 years ago, the Meridian account. She turned to look at him. You were there? He held her gaze. In the back. I had heard about you through a contact. Someone who had seen you work and said, He paused, choosing the words that were true. That there was someone I should know about. I went because I needed to know you were okay. The city glowed behind him. The sky was moving from gold to blue at the edges. I watched you own that room. His voice was quiet. And every person in it was looking at you, and you knew it, and you didn't need it, and you were extraordinary. He stopped. I went home and did nothing about it for 18 months because I was exactly what you called me in a hotel hallway. A coward, she said. A coward, he agreed. And then you walked into my building and I understood that the universe was either giving me one more chance or showing me exactly what I had lost. And I decided, he reached into his pocket, that I was not going to find out which one it was without asking. The ring was not large. It was not designed to perform wealth or spectacle. It was a simple gold band, warm yellow gold, with a single stone, small and specific, set low, the kind of ring chosen by a man who had paid attention to what she actually wore, what she actually loved, what fit the specific person she was rather than the idea of a woman being proposed to. He did not get on one knee. He took her hand, held it in both of his, looked at her. I want to spend the rest of my life being someone you chose on purpose. His voice was steady, not by accident, not by proximity, not because I was there and the circumstances made it convenient, on purpose, with full information, knowing everything. He looked at her in the gold light with the city behind them and his whole chest entirely open. Will you let me? Abeni looked at him, at the ring, at the city below. The city she had moved to with 2 bags and a box of books and a name that was entirely her own. She thought about everything it had taken to get here, everything she had built, everything she had chosen. She looked at him and took the full measure of the moment in the way she did everything, completely, on her own terms, in her own time. She made him wait exactly long enough. Then, yes, he exhaled. The breath of a man who had been holding it since a church 3 years ago and was only now finally allowed to let it go. He slid the ring on. She looked at her hand, then at him. I'm telling Amma before you tell Byung-hun. Reasonable. I mean it. If Byung-hun knows first, I will return this ring. Understood. I'm serious, Woo-jin. I know you are. He smiled. The real one. She pointed at him, the way she always did when he was being too much and exactly right at the same time. Then she let him take her hand, and they stood on the rooftop as the city lit itself up below them, gold and ordinary and entirely theirs. A year later, a Saturday, light through tall windows the color of something that had been waited for. The wedding was not small. Woo-jin Seo did not do small. Abeni had known this and had negotiated exactly the parts she needed to be hers and let him have the rest. Yellow flowers, everywhere. She had not chosen them. Amma had insisted, had shown up to the first planning meeting with a photo on her phone and said these, everywhere, non-negotiable, and Woo-jin had looked at them and said yes without hesitation and without explanation, because some things did not need explaining to the person who understood why yellow. The ceremony was everything a ceremony should be between 2 people who had already survived the worst version of each other and chosen to try the best. They wrote their own vows. His were shorter than expected, precise, as specific. The language of a man who meant every word and had learned that meaning every word was the whole point. Hers made Amma cry from the second sentence. Amma would not confirm this. There was photographic evidence. Byung-hun cried during the first dance. This was witnessed by 17 people, captured by the photographer on 3 separate frames, and would be brought up at every significant occasion for the rest of his life. He denied everything. The evidence was irrefutable. He denied it anyway. Later, the reception still warm and loud and full behind the glass doors, the band playing something that had made Abeni close her eyes when they had chosen it. for reasons only two people fully understood. They slipped out to the balcony. Just them. The city below. The kind of night that held everything lightly. She leaned into him. Now he put his arm around her. They stood for a moment without speaking, the specific comfort of two people who had earned their silence. Then Abeni said, "You know what's funny?" I almost didn't take the job." He looked down at her. "What stopped you?" She smiled. That smile. The slow one. The real one. The one that came up without permission and lit up everything above her collarbone. "The work," she said. "The work was too good to pass up." He laughed. Loud and full. The laugh that had no boardroom in it, no performance, no armor. Just him. She laughed too. The real one. The unguarded one. The one he had been falling toward since a Tuesday elevator and a throwaway sentence about a cafe on Mercer. Below them, the city kept moving. Indifferent. Brilliant. Completely unbothered by the two people on the balcony above it who had found their way to this particular evening through everything it had taken to get here. Some things, once they become yours, stop needing to be explained. They just are. And this, the laughter, the city, the yellow flowers still glowing through the glass behind them, Amma already texting from somewhere inside, Byung-hun definitely not crying near the bar. This was theirs, fully, finally, on purpose.